Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Azazel. Azazel has the reputation of being one of the strongest characters in the game, and I won't dispute that just because having a short-range brimstone and obviously having flight is a very good tool to actually being strong offensively and defensively. But at the same time, I would argue that Azazel is a very unfun character, and I think the biggest reason for that is just his lack of synergies, or maybe his lack of impact on items. And I think the greatest example of this is this ride exactly, because we picked up Tech X, and whenever you see Tech X, you really expect something awesome to happen, because you expect maybe laser tears. If you have Brimstone, you expect Brimstone tears, but nothing like that happens. With Azazel, you just pick up Tech X, and there's just nothing. Literally nothing happens, and I think that's very disappointing, because as players, we have this expectation of certain things, certain awesome things, epic things happening when you see a very cool item, and when you pick it up and then just there's no consequence or nothing happens, you just end up feeling very void inside, and you're feeling like, okay, that's a waste, because I'm playing as this very strong character and I had the opportunity to be even stronger, but the game didn't give me that joy. And I think that creates a very false pretense whenever you're playing that maybe things aren't as they should be, and I think that experience gives you a very bad leaves you with a very bad taste in your mouth, and that kind of negates negatively on the character as Azazel. And I think that's a very fair remark to make, the fact that he doesn't have a lot of fun synergies. But at the same time, some people could argue he's already strong enough, you don't really need those crazy synergies. It's his uniqueness that makes him this way. Basically, he's supposed to be the character that is just strong outright, who's very boring to play, so he shouldn't get synergies just because, it would make it just a bit too crazy maybe. But at the same time, maybe the designer has made it that he is this powerhouse that's very strong, but at the same time he shouldn't really be a lot of fun to play as, just because then people would have a cop-out. Because it's much better to play as a challenging character that has just a lot of more fun things going on, than just playing as an easy character that just has nothing going on. And I think that's a fair argument to make, that the fact that he's supposed to be this easy character to play as, that maybe he shouldn't be rewarded the same as other characters. But at the same time, whenever you're playing this game and there's 11 other characters, I think it's more of a matter of consistency and player expectation, because I really think to have an enjoyable gaming experience, when a player thinks that a certain thing should happen, so in this case when you pick up Tech X, that something epic will happen, that you should deliver on that promise, unless you want the player to be feeling left disappointed. So that's my thinking, that this is actually more of a bug, or maybe just something that as they were coding they missed for some reason, maybe just due to development time, maybe it was rushed or something, and they just maybe overlooked it. And I think that's also a fair thing, just because of how games work, and it's very hard with a game like Isaac to go through every single combination, and I think up until this point I never even noticed that Tech X didn't synergize with Azazel, so obviously it's not a very impactful thing. But at the same time, those little things do make up for Azazel feeling like he's a bit lackluster. But also because he doesn't have any synergies, I think there's another point to be made, that Azazel is very unfun, and that a lot of his runs turn very samey. So maybe you end up finding a very strong item, or maybe you're just left there with a Brimstone. And whenever there's a Brimstone daily, you know that I just like to skim over if you're an avid watcher, and thanks to you who do. But they turn in very samey, because at that point you don't really need any other items. There's no strategy. You just go through the rooms, you charge up your Brimstone and just unleash it and just kill everyone in the room, and that's what happens maybe 40 times, and at that point you're at the end of the run and you're finished. And I think that's the same that happens with Azazel. The only difference is that he has a very short range, so there's really no counterplay. But with Azazel, I think it's even worse, just because he does have a very low range, which means that a lot of bosses you kind of have to fight differently, and it becomes this game of chicken that doesn't really feel right. So let me give you an example. Let's say Ragman, which was the first boss of this run. His maybe most signature attack is that he detaches his head, and when the head is rolling around, you can shoot it, and you actually deal damage to the boss at the same time. Of course, if you don't kill the head, then a spider spawns, and then those spiders are annoying. But with Azazel, that's really the best, or maybe the safest opportunity to kill Ragman when he detaches his head, because at that point he can't do any other attacks, and you're closer to the head than to Ragman itself, so he can't really do anything to you. And because you have a lot of high starting damage, you usually can kill the head before he can spawn any spiders. But as you go through the game, maybe as you're fighting him, you become certainly impatient, because if you go next to him with your low range, he does have a lot of high fast attacks that he doesn't really have a tell for, meaning that he doesn't really show you that he's going to perform a certain attack. And that's very problematic with Azazel, especially because Ragman has those fast homing shots that if you're close to him, they're going to hit you basically you can't dodge them just because they are so fast and they have a very strong homing. And with Azazel, you are kind of forced to be in that vicinity that if he does that attack, he will eventually hit you. And that's very problematic because what happens is, well, you're really not daring to go close to him, so you really need to wait for that head detachment attack, if you could call it that. And when that happens, of course, you shoot a few times, of course it takes maybe like 15% of his health, but Ragman has of course some nasty probabilities, like shooting or maybe healing himself and spawning a bunch of spiders, and besides healing himself, which kind of retracts from all the damage you've done to him, you also have to deal with spiders now, which means that you can deal with Ragman if he does yet another attack, so you just don't have as many opportunities. So as you fight him, even with Azazel, eventually you become impatient, and you want to go close into him and attack him, even if he doesn't do his head detachment attack, even though it's the only safe attack you can reliably dodge. And when that happens, you eventually get hit, and that feels very bad, because you feel like at that point the game is punishing you for being impatient, and I guess that's exactly what should happen. But the fact it feels cheated because the game made you feel impatient, just because of how the game worked, because you know that there's no chance for you to get close to him without actually getting hit unless he does his head detachment attack. And I think that creates a very very bad feeling for the character, just because it does promote a lot of, like I said, chicken play, which means that you just have to wait and basically be afraid of anything Ragman does until he does that one particular attack. And because the RNG or maybe his AI is random, it can take a lot of time before he does it, and even if he doesn't, he can end up healing himself, and that just ends up being very frustrating. So I think that's the two main reasons why Azazel is just not a very fun character. And you might notice that I'm not talking much about a daily, but it's also because I feel like this daily, or maybe any Azazel daily, turns out very similar, and there's really nothing to talk about. So in this daily we did get a bit lucky, and we did get the Brimstone, and thankfully the Brimstone is a very good item on just any character, obviously, but the fact that we have a lot of higher range makes this fight with Hush much easier. But fighting the Hush with low range against has the same problem as Ragman, just because you can't really get close to him in order to deal enough damage, just because of how many shots he has in a lot of his attacks, which means that you have to wait for the attacks where it's safe to go near him. And then again, Hush is like that problem multiplied by 15, because he doesn't spawn just 2 spiders, he spawns a million of those little blue guys or maybe polyps that you have to dodge and deal with, and that retracts from your focus of actually hitting him, which means that it takes just even much longer, and it makes you feel even more frustrated. And also the fact he has scaling health, which means that he just doesn't seem to want to die. Just everything is culminated in one bad boss design, or not bad boss design, but bad boss design for Azazel in particular. And like I said, I think that's more of a problem of Azazel than it is for any other character. And like I said, the runs turn out very samey. Even if you get a very strong item like Brimstone, we just end up going from room to room and just killing enemies basically, and that's it. And there really wasn't any strategy to today's daily. And even better, actually, the second floor had 3 ways to get a Devil Deal: the Joker card, the Red Chest, or just getting a Devil Deal naturally. And all of those options, I think, give you different Devil Deal items. So depending on which one you took, can really shape your run at that point, because those Devil Deals, I think, affect the Devil Deals in the future. And even if they don't, you just get a different set of items. So someone might get a very strong item, or in my case, I just didn't get anything of value at all. So that's kind of a bummer. But we did finish 28, thankfully. We apparently did make some right turns here and there. We did pick up Brimstone and Lump of Coal, which is obviously a great synergy for dealing just a lot of damage. And we cleared the run no problem. We visited, I think, all the secret rooms, the second secret rooms, past the second floor, so that was a great thing. I did wish that we would be able to get a more swag bonus, so a lot more consumables, but sadly the cards didn't come from the crystal ball, and you know, what can you do about it? Still, I'm satisfied with our score for the day, even though it was a bit more lame than usual, but the run went as the run went. I hope you enjoyed my little rant about Azazel. I don't usually rant, or maybe I do like to rant, but I feel like I should be constructive, and I hope I was constructive, at least in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.